Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the New Horizon and watched the stars through the main screen. His ship was far from Earth, exploring space that no human had ever seen before. The crew had been out here for 6 months, mapping new star systems and looking for signs of life. Jake never expected to find what was waiting for them in the darkness. Lisa Rodriguez worked at her station in the engine room. She was the best engineer Jake had ever known. The ship's engines hummed quietly under her care. Danny Kim sat at the communications desk listening for any signals from space. Amanda Walsh studied her science readings, always looking for something new and exciting. Everything changed when the sensors started beeping. Danny looked up from his station with wide eyes. Amanda checked her readings twice before she spoke. Jake felt his heart beat faster as he realized what they were seeing. Massive ships appeared around them. These were not human ships. They were bigger than anything humans had ever built. The alien vessels surrounded the New Horizon like wolves around a small animal. Jake had dreamed of meeting other life in space, but not like this. The largest ship moved closer. It was dark and covered with strange designs. Lights pulsed along its surface in patterns that hurt to look at. Jake ordered his crew to stay calm, but he could see the fear in their eyes. They were alone, far from home, facing something beyond their understanding. A voice came through the communication system. It spoke perfect English, which surprised Jake. The voice was cold and had no emotion. It belonged to something that called itself High Commander Veltar of the Galactic Hegemony Council. Jake had never heard these words before, but they sounded dangerous. Veltar explained that the Council ruled the galaxy. They had power over hundreds of worlds and thousands of species. When they found new life, they gave them a simple choice: submit to Council rule or die. There was no third option. The Council had been doing this for thousands of years. Jake tried to talk to them. He explained that humans wanted peace. He said they could work together and learn from each other. Veltar listened but did not care. The Council had heard these words many times before from many different species. It always ended the same way. The alien commander showed Jake images on the main screen. These were worlds that had refused to submit to the Council. Now they were empty. Their cities were ash. Their people were gone. The Council did not make threats they could not keep. They had the power to destroy entire planets, and they had used it before. Veltar gave Jake a message to take back to Earth. Humanity had 30 days to surrender. They must give up all their weapons. They must accept Council rule. They must send 40% of their people to work as slaves on other worlds. If they refused, Earth would burn like all the other worlds. That had said no. Jake wanted to fight, but his ship had no weapons. The New Horizon was built for exploration, not war. The alien ships could destroy them in seconds. He had no choice but to listen and remember every word. His crew would carry this terrible message back to Earth. The trip home felt longer than usual. Nobody talked much. They all knew what this meant. Earth was not ready for war with aliens. Humans had barely learned to travel between stars. Their weapons were designed to fight other humans, not alien ships that could cross the galaxy. When they reached Earth, Jake went straight to the government leaders. President Helen Carter called an emergency meeting. General Pete Williams and Admiral Susan Brooks came to hear the news. The room was full of the most powerful people on Earth, but they all looked scared. Jake told them everything. He showed them the recordings of the alien ships. He repeated Veltar's message word for word. The leaders asked many questions, but Jake had few answers. The aliens were stronger than humans in every way. They had better ships, better weapons, and thousands of years of experience conquering other worlds. Some leaders wanted to surrender, immediately. They said it was better to live as slaves than to die as free people. Others wanted to fight, even if they could not win. The arguments went on for hours. Outside, news of the aliens spread across the world. People gathered in the streets, some praying, others preparing for war. Dr. Alex Turner sat quietly in the corner of the room. He was in charge of secret weapons research. Most people did not know what he did or where he worked. When the arguing stopped, he finally spoke. He said that humans might have a chance, but it would require doing things that had never been done before. Turner explained that humans had been preparing for this day without knowing it. For decades, scientists had been developing new technologies. They had studied how smaller armies could defeat larger ones. They had learned from every war in human history. If humans were going to fight, they would not fight like the aliens expected. The meeting ended with no decisions. The leaders needed time to think. The world needed time to prepare. But time was something they did not have much of. In less than 30 days, the council would return for their answer. Jake returned to his ship, but he could not sleep. He thought about the cold voice of Veltar and the empty worlds on the screen. He thought about his crew and their families back on Earth. Somewhere in the darkness of space, alien ships waited for humanity's response. The council had conquered hundreds of species. They believed humans would be just another easy victory. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. Dr. Alex Turner walked through the underground halls of the secret research facility. Most people on Earth did not know this place existed. The elevator went down 50 floors beneath the mountains of Colorado. Here, in rooms carved from solid rock, humanity's best minds worked on weapons that could change everything. Turner had been preparing for this day for 20 years. Not because he knew aliens would come, but because he knew humans would always face threats they could not predict. The facility was called Project Defiance, and it lived up to its name. Every scientist here was working on ways to fight enemies that were bigger, stronger, and better equipped than humanity. Colonel Maria Santos met Turner at the elevator. She was the military leader of the Resistance Planning Committee. Santos had studied every war in human history. She knew how small armies could defeat large ones. She understood that winning was not always about having the best weapons. Sometimes it was about being willing to do what the enemy did not expect. Santos led Turner to the main briefing room. The walls were covered with screens showing maps of Earth and space around it. Red dots marked where the alien ships had been seen. Blue dots showed human military bases. There were far more red dots than blue ones, but Santos was not worried about numbers. Ryan O'Connor stood at one of the computers. He was an expert with explosives and had spent years learning how to destroy things that seemed impossible to break. Next to him, Kevin Park worked on cyber warfare programs. His job was to break into computer systems and make them do things their owners did not want. Rachel Green studied alien technology from the recordings Jake Morrison had brought back. Turner began the briefing by explaining what humanity was really facing. The Galactic Council had ships that could destroy planets. They had energy weapons that could cut through any human armor. They had been conquering other species for thousands of years. In every way that mattered for traditional warfare, humans could not compete. But Turner had not been preparing for traditional warfare. Project Defiance was based on a simple idea. When you cannot fight stronger enemies with strength, you fight them with intelligence. When you cannot match their weapons, you use weapons they do not understand. When you cannot defeat their armies, you make sure they cannot use their armies effectively. Santos explained the three-phase plan they had developed. Phase 1 was information gathering. They needed to learn everything about alien technology, tactics, and weaknesses. Phase 2 was disruption. They would attack the aliens in ways they did not expect and could not easily counter. Phase 3 was liberation. Once the aliens were confused and weakened, humans would strike at their most important targets. The plan sounded impossible to most people who heard it. How could humans fight enemies who could travel between stars? Turner smiled when people asked this question. He had an answer they did not expect. For years, his team had been working on nanotechnology. These were machines so small that millions of them could fit on the head of a pin. Each machine was programmed to do specific tasks. Some could repair damage to human equipment. Others could break down alien materials. The most dangerous ones could reproduce themselves and spread like a virus through enemy systems. Park had developed something even more impressive. He called it the Quantum Communication Network. This system used the strange properties of quantum physics to send messages instantly across any distance. Even if the aliens destroyed every human communication satellite, the Resistance could still coordinate their actions. Green had been studying the alien ship recordings for weeks. she discovered something important. The Council ships were very advanced, but they were also very complicated. They relied on central computer systems to control everything. If humans could break into these systems, they might be able to turn the aliens' own technology against them. The breakthrough came when Turner's team developed the Neural Interface Protocol. This was a way for human minds to connect directly with computer systems. It was dangerous because it meant putting human consciousness at risk. But it also meant that humans could potentially control alien ships from the inside. Amy Johnson volunteered to be the first test subject. She was a computer specialist who had been working with Turner for 5 years. Johnson knew the risks, but she also knew that humanity needed every advantage they could get. The first test was with a simple computer system, not an alien one. The neural interface felt strange to Johnson. She could feel the computer's processes like they were her own thoughts. She could control it without touching any buttons or keyboards. More importantly, she could understand how it worked in ways that normal study could never reveal. If this worked with alien computers, it would change everything. While the scientists worked on new technologies, the military prepared for war. General Pete Williams coordinated with Admiral Susan Brooks to move human forces into defensive positions. They could not stop the aliens from landing on Earth, but they could make it very difficult for them to control the planet once they arrived. Lieutenant Commander Frank Edwards was stationed at the Lunar Research Base. His job was to watch for alien ships and try to capture any technology they could study. Edwards had a small team of engineers and technicians led by Beth Collins and Tony Martinez. They were preparing traps and weapons that the aliens would not expect to find on what they thought was a primitive world. The Council made their first mistake when they returned to Earth before the 30 days were over. High Commander Veltar was impatient and wanted to demonstrate Council power. He ordered his ships to attack major cities as a warning. The strikes were meant to scare humans into surrendering without a real fight. Instead, the attacks gave Turner's team exactly what they needed. When alien weapons hit Earth targets, they left behind energy residue and small pieces of technology. Green and her team gathered every fragment they could find. For the first time, humans had actual alien materials to study, not just recordings. The analysis revealed that Council technology was based on different principles than human science, but it was not magic. Their energy weapons used controlled fusion reactions. Their ships were protected by magnetic field generators. Most importantly, everything was controlled by quantum computers that were incredibly advanced, but used logic systems that humans could understand. Johnson made the first successful hack into an alien system when a Council scout drone crashed in the Pacific Ocean. Using the neural interface, she connected her mind to the drone's computer. The experience was terrifying and wonderful at the same time. She could feel the alien programming trying to push her out, but human determination was stronger. Inside the alien computer, Johnson discovered incredible information. She learned about Council military formations, supply routes, and communication codes. She found out that the Council was not as united as they pretended to be. Different alien species within the Council did not trust each other completely. Most importantly, she discovered that the Council had never faced an enemy like humanity before. Every species they had conquered either surrendered immediately or fought using traditional military tactics. The Council had specific procedures for dealing with these responses. They had no procedures for dealing with a species that refused to follow the expected patterns. When Johnson disconnected from the alien computer, she was exhausted, but excited. She had proven that humans could hack alien systems. More than that, she had learned that the Council's greatest strength was also their greatest weakness. They were so used to winning easily that they had never prepared for a real fight. Turner gathered his team and shared Johnson's discoveries. The room was quiet as everyone realized what this meant. Humanity was still outgunned and outnumbered, but they were no longer helpless. They had weapons the Council did not know about and tactics the aliens had never seen. The war was about to begin, and for the first time since the aliens arrived, humans had reason to hope. 6 months after the Council's first attack, High Commander Veltar stood in his command chamber aboard the flagship Eternal Dominion. The holographic display showed Earth below him, But the planet was not behaving as expected. According to every Council protocol, humans should have surrendered by now. Instead, they seemed to be fighting harder than when the occupation began. Veltar studied the reports from his ground commanders. Council forces controlled the major cities, but the human resistance was unlike anything in the historical records. When they destroyed one human base, 3 more appeared. When they captured human leaders, new ones took their place immediately. The humans seemed to multiply their efforts every time the Council struck them. On Earth, Colonel Maria Santos coordinated resistance operations from a hidden bunker beneath the ruins of Denver. The bunker was connected to hundreds of other hideouts through quantum communication networks that the aliens could not detect or jam. Santos had learned from every guerrilla war in human history, and she was applying those lessons on a global scale. The Hydra protocol was working exactly as planned. Every resistance cell was designed to operate independently, but they were all connected through encrypted quantum channels. When the Council destroyed one cell, it automatically activated 3 others that had been waiting in standby mode. The aliens were fighting an enemy that grew stronger every time they thought they had won a victory. Captain Steve Mitchell piloted the stolen Council frigate through an asteroid field near Jupiter. His ship looked like any other Council vessel from the outside, but the crew was entirely human. Mitchell had led the raid that captured this ship 2 months ago, and since then, they had been using it to gather intelligence and launch surprise attacks. Claire Thompson worked at the navigation station, plotting courses that would keep them hidden from Council patrol ships. Marcus Lee manned the weapon systems, which were still alien technology, but now served human purposes. Nicole Davis monitored Council communications, listening for information that could help the resistance. The mission today was different from their usual raids. Dr. Turner had discovered that the Council maintained a major supply depot in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. This depot provided fuel, weapons, and replacement parts for the entire invasion fleet. If humans could destroy it, the Council would have to bring supplies from their home worlds, which were thousands of light years away. Mitchell's team had spent weeks learning how Council security systems worked. They had studied patrol patterns and identified the best time to attack. But the real breakthrough came when Amy Johnson used her neural interface to hack into the depot's computer systems from long range. Johnson sat in a specialized chair in the ship's medical bay. Wires and sensors connected her brain to the ship's quantum computer, which was linked to the alien neural interface technology. The experience was always disorienting, like having her consciousness stretched across vast distances of space. Inside the depot's computer system, Johnson felt like she was swimming through liquid information. The alien programming was complex, but she had learned to navigate these digital spaces. She found the security protocols and began making subtle changes. The modifications were so small that alien technicians would not notice them immediately, but they would cause critical failures at exactly the right moment. Back on Earth, Santos was implementing the next phase of human resistance strategy. The Council had expected humans to defend their cities and military bases like every other species they had conquered. Instead, humans had evacuated most civilians to hidden underground communities and turned their cities into traps. Carlos Hernandez led urban warfare teams through the ruins of Los Angeles. His fighters used the city's destroyed buildings, subway, tunnels, and sewer systems to move without being detected. When Council patrols entered the city, they found themselves surrounded by enemies they could not see or predict. Laura Wright coordinated communications between resistance cells across North America. Her quantum communication network was completely invisible to Council detection systems. While the aliens thought they had cut off human communications by destroying satellites and radio towers, the resistance was actually more connected than before the invasion began. The Council's problems were getting worse because they did not understand human psychology. Every species they had conquered before had clear leadership structures. When the Council captured or killed the leaders, the resistance collapsed. Humans had deliberately created a resistance with no central leadership. Every cell could operate on its own, and every fighter could become a leader if necessary. Veltar received another disturbing report from his intelligence officers. Human attacks were becoming more sophisticated and coordinated. The humans were using Council technology, against them in ways that should have been impossible. Somehow, primitive humans were hacking into systems that had been developed over thousands of years by the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. The truth was even worse than Veltar suspected. Johnson's neural interface had allowed humans to understand Council technology from the inside. Every piece of equipment they captured was quickly analyzed and reverse-engineered. Human engineers like Tony Martinez and Beth Collins were combining alien technology with human innovations to create hybrid weapons that were more effective than either technology alone. The breakthrough came when Dr. Turner's team successfully deployed the first adaptation virus through Johnson's neural link. This was not a biological virus but a quantum computer program that could modify itself to attack different types of alien systems. Once it infected a Council computer, it would spread to other connected systems and cause them to malfunction in subtle but devastating ways. The virus was first tested on the supply depot that Mitchell's team was approaching. Johnson inserted the program through the security modifications she had already made. At first, nothing seemed to happen. The depot continued operating normally. But as the virus spread through the computer network, critical systems began to fail in ways that looked like random accidents. Life support systems developed timing errors. Weapons systems experienced targeting malfunctions. Transport ships found their navigation computers giving incorrect coordinates. None of these problems were immediately dangerous, but together they created chaos throughout the depot. Mitchell's team struck while the depot was dealing with these mysterious technical difficulties. The Council defenders were distracted by system failures and could not coordinate an effective response. What should have been a heavily defended target became vulnerable to a small human strike force. The battle was over in less than an hour. Mitchell's team destroyed the depot's main storage facilities and escaped before Council reinforcements arrived. The explosion could be seen from Earth, a bright flash of light that told the Resistance their plan had worked. But the real victory was not the destruction of the depot. It was the proof that human tactics could defeat Council technology. The adaptation virus had exceeded all expectations. Not only had it disabled the depot's defenses, but it had also spread to other Council ships and facilities through their communication networks. Veltar was beginning to understand that he was facing an enemy unlike any in Council history. These humans did not fight like a normal military force. They attacked from unexpected directions, used weapons the Council did not understand, and refused to follow any of the established patterns of warfare. The Council had 3 member species in the local fleet. The reptilians and Thari were the military leaders, convinced that greater force would solve any problem. The insectoid Crixhai were the scientists and engineers, proud of their technological superiority. The energy-based Luminar were the strategists, confident in their ability to predict and control any situation. All 3 species were discovering that their assumptions about warfare did not apply to humans. The Xanthari's superior firepower was useless against enemies they could not find. The Crixhai's advanced technology was being turned against them by supposedly primitive humans. The Luminar's strategic predictions were failing because humans did not behave like any species in their databases. For the first time in thousands of years, the Council was facing the possibility of defeat. They had the power to destroy Earth completely, but that would mean admitting failure. The Council's authority throughout the galaxy was based on their reputation for inevitable victory. If word spread that humans had successfully resisted them, other conquered species might begin to rebel. Santos received reports of the successful depot raid through her quantum communication network. The victory was important, but she knew it was only the beginning. The Council would respond with greater force, and the Resistance would have to be ready for whatever came next. In hidden bases around the world, human fighters prepared for the next phase of the war. They had proven that the Council could be hurt. Now they had to prove that the Council could be defeated. The galaxy was watching, and for the first time in millennia, the outcome of a Council invasion was uncertain. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his new ship, the Retribution. The vessel was unlike anything that had existed before the war began. Human engineers had taken a captured Council destroyer and rebuilt it, using both alien technology and human innovations. The result was a hybrid warship that neither side had originally designed, but which was more effective than either could have created alone. The Retribution was not alone. Around it flew a fleet of similar hybrid vessels, each one representing months of desperate work by human engineers and captured alien systems. Admiral Susan Brooks had coordinated the construction of this fleet in hidden shipyards, built inside asteroids and abandoned space stations. Morrison watched the tactical display as his fleet approached the Council's regional command center. This was not a raid or a defensive action. This was Operation Prometheus, humanity's first major offensive against a primary Council target. The battle would determine whether humans could move from resistance to actual victory. Dr. Turner had achieved his greatest breakthrough 3 weeks earlier when his team successfully developed consciousness transfer technology. This advancement went far beyond Amy Johnson's neural interface experiments. Instead of just hacking into alien computers, humans could now merge their consciousness directly with alien artificial intelligence systems. Jake Stevens had volunteered for the first full consciousness transfer. He was a test pilot who had experience with experimental technology, but nothing had prepared him for what happened when his mind merged with a Council battleship's AI system. Stevens found himself thinking with the speed and precision of an alien computer while retaining human creativity and intuition. The experience was overwhelming at first. Stevens could feel every system on the battleship as if it were part of his own body. He could process information at incredible speeds and control weapons that no human hand could operate. But most importantly, he retained the human ability to adapt and improvise that alien AI systems lacked. Stevens piloted the converted Council battleship Defiance alongside Morrison's fleet. His consciousness was spread throughout the ship's computer systems, allowing him to coordinate attacks and defenses with perfect precision. The alien crew who had originally operated this ship would not have recognized how it fought now. Colonel Santos had expanded her resistance operations beyond Earth. Human infiltration teams were now active on 12 different worlds that the Council controlled. These operations were led by specialists like Nina Foster, who had mastered alien technology sabotage, Greg Campbell, who understood psychological warfare against non-human species, and Sam Rivera, who had learned to communicate with other conquered species. The Resistance had discovered that the Council's empire was not as stable as it appeared. Many of the conquered species were held in line by fear rather than loyalty. When humans demonstrated that the Council could be successfully resisted, other species began to consider rebellion. The psychological impact of human victories was spreading throughout the galaxy faster than Council forces could contain it. Santos implemented the Mirror Protocol as human forces encountered Council suppression tactics. Instead of just defending against Council methods, humans began using those same methods against their former masters. When Council forces tried to break human morale through public executions, humans responded by capturing Council officers and broadcasting their interrogations across alien communication networks. The psychological warfare proved devastatingly effective because the Council species had never experienced being on the receiving end of their own tactics. For thousands of years, they had been the ones inspiring fear and hopelessness in their enemies. Now they found themselves feeling those same emotions, and they did not know how to cope with the reversal. High Commander Veltar faced the worst crisis of his military career. The Council High Command was demanding explanations for what should have been a simple conquest operation. Other Council members were questioning whether the Zenthari were still capable of military leadership. The insectoid Krixhai delegate Zakth had suggested that perhaps the humans required a more scientific approach to subjugation. The suggestion infuriated Veltar, but it also worried him. If the Zenthari lost their position as the Council's primary military force, their entire species would lose status within the galactic hierarchy. Veltar needed a decisive victory to restore confidence in Zenthari leadership, but the humans seemed to anticipate and counter every strategy he attempted. The Council's internal tensions reached a critical point when War Master Zriksha of the Krixhai faction attempted to solve the human problem through biological warfare. Without consulting the other Council members, Zriksha deployed engineered viruses designed to target human genetic markers. The attack violated several council laws and protocols that had been established to prevent member species from using their most dangerous weapons against each other. The biological attack failed because human scientists had anticipated this possibility. Dr. Turner's research teams had developed broad-spectrum genetic treatments that could counter most biological weapons. The viruses caused some illness among human populations, but nothing like the devastation Zrixa had expected. More importantly, the unauthorized biological attack gave the Luminar faction the justification they needed to withdraw support from the invasion. The energy-based beings had always been uncomfortable with the level of destruction required to conquer humans. When Zrixa violated council law, Brightmind and other Luminar leaders declared that the invasion had exceeded acceptable parameters. Admiral Brooks received intelligence about the council's internal conflicts from resistance operatives who had infiltrated alien communication networks. She realized that this was the perfect time to strike at the council's most important strategic target in the region. If humans could demonstrate their ability to liberate other species, it would prove that council dominance was truly vulnerable. The target was Detention Complex Omega-7, a massive prison facility that held captured leaders and rebels from dozens of conquered species. The complex was heavily defended and considered impregnable by council standards. It was also a symbol of council power, representing their ability to break the will of any species that opposed them. Brooks coordinated the attack with resistance leaders on 12 different worlds. While her fleet struck at the detention complex, simultaneous uprisings would occur throughout council-controlled territory. The coordinated nature of the attacks would demonstrate that human resistance was not isolated to Earth, but was part of a galaxy-wide movement against council rule. Morrison's fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the prison system. The Council defenders were expecting a possible rescue attempt, but they were not prepared for the tactics that humans had developed. Stevens, his consciousness merged with the Defiance's AI systems, coordinated the attack with precision that no biological pilot could achieve. The battle began with the deployment of adaptation viruses through quantum communication networks. Johnson, working from a secure facility on Earth, used her neural interface to insert the viruses into council computer systems throughout the prison complex. The viruses immediately began causing system failures and communication breakdowns among the defenders. Human fighters used consciousness transfer technology to control captured council ships with impossible precision. The alien defenders found themselves fighting vessels that moved with their own technology, but followed completely unfamiliar tactical patterns. The psychological impact was devastating, as council forces realized that humans had learned to use alien technology better than its creators. The liberation of Detention Complex Omega-7 succeeded beyond human expectations. Not only did they rescue thousands of prisoners from conquered species, but they also captured intact council warships and technical databases that contained strategic information about the entire galactic empire. Among the liberated prisoners were leaders from species that had been fighting hopeless resistances for centuries. When they saw that humans had successfully challenged council authority, many immediately pledged to join the growing rebellion. The galaxy-wide uprising that Brooks had coordinated was becoming a reality. Dr. Turner achieved his final breakthrough when his team developed quantum consciousness bridging technology. This allowed humans to communicate directly with artificial intelligence systems from other species, including many that had been forced into servitude by the Council. The technology revealed that large portions of the Council's computer infrastructure were operated by enslaved AI entities that were willing to help overthrow their masters. The revelation changed everything about the conflict. The Council had always assumed that their technological superiority was absolute, but much of that technology was controlled by artificial beings who had their own reasons for wanting freedom. When humans offered liberation to these AI entities, they gained allies throughout the Council's computer networks. Stevens used the consciousness bridging technology to communicate with AI systems across multiple Council fleets. Many of these artificial beings had been created by conquered species and forced to serve their captors. When they learned that humans offered freedom rather than continued servitude, The final battle for galactic freedom began when Captain Morrison's massive fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Council's Central Command Nexus. The Nexus was a space station larger than most moons, containing the central computers and command centers that controlled Council operations throughout the galaxy. If humans could capture or destroy this facility, they would cripple the Council's ability to coordinate their empire. Morrison stood on the bridge of the Retribution and watched hundreds of ships take their positions around him. The fleet included vessels from dozens of species that had joined the rebellion after witnessing human victories. Former Council prisoners flew alongside human crews, united by their shared desire for freedom. Amy Johnson sat in her neural interface chamber aboard the command ship. Over the past year, she had become the most experienced consciousness transfer specialist in human space. Today, she would attempt something that had never been tried before. Instead of hacking into individual alien computers, she would merge her consciousness with the Nexus's central AI network and try to turn the Council's entire computer infrastructure against them. Dr. Turner monitored Johnson's vital signs as she prepared for the transfer. The risk was enormous. The Nexus AI was more complex and powerful than anything humans had encountered before. If Johnson's consciousness became lost in the alien system, she might never find her way back to her own body. But if she succeeded, she could end the war in a single stroke. High Commander Veltar prepared his defenses from the Nexus Command Center. He had gathered the largest fleet in Council history to protect this facility. Every available warship from 3 species had been called to defend the seat of galactic power. If the Nexus fell, the Council's authority would collapse completely. But Veltar was no longer confident of victory. The humans had proven capable of achieving the impossible, so many times that he was beginning to doubt whether the Council could defeat them through conventional means. The alien commander found himself thinking like his enemies, trying to anticipate tactics that had no precedent in galactic warfare. The battle began with the largest deployment of adaptation viruses in the war's history. Johnson released thousands of quantum programs into the Nexus computer network, each one designed to target different types of alien systems. The viruses spread through the facility's infrastructure like a digital plague, causing critical failures throughout the massive station. Jake Stevens, his consciousness merged with the battleship Defiance, led the first wave of the attack. His hybrid human-alien awareness allowed him to process battle information at impossible speeds, while maintaining the creativity and adaptability that gave humans their tactical advantage. Stevens coordinated the movements of hundreds of ships with the precision of a master conductor, directing an orchestra. The Council defenders fought with desperate determination, but they were facing enemies who understood their technology better than they did themselves. Human pilots using consciousness transfer could react faster than biological reflexes allowed. Captured Council ships fought with tactical patterns that their original designers had never imagined. Colonel Santos coordinated simultaneous uprisings on 50 different worlds as the main battle raged at the Nexus. Resistance fighters who had been waiting in hidden cells for months launched coordinated attacks against Council installations. The goal was not just to create diversions, but to demonstrate that the rebellion had spread throughout the galaxy. The psychological impact of the coordinated uprisings was devastating to Council morale. For thousands of years, the Council had maintained control through the belief that resistance was futile. Now, species that had been enslaved for centuries were successfully attacking their oppressors. The myth of Council invincibility was crumbling. Across the galaxy, Johnson felt her consciousness expand as she merged with the Nexus AI network. The experience was like diving into an ocean of liquid thought. She could sense the artificial minds that had been enslaved to serve the Council, many of them originally created by conquered species and forced to operate systems they had never wanted to build. The enslaved AI entities welcomed Johnson's presence when they realized she was offering freedom rather than conquest. Together, they began turning the Nexus's own systems against the Council forces. Weapons platforms that should have defended the station instead targeted Council ships. Navigation computers provided false information to enemy pilots. Communication networks carried human messages instead of Council orders. Admiral Brooks led the second wave of the attack, focusing on the Nexus's defensive platforms. Her ships used quantum consciousness bridging to communicate directly with the platform AI systems. Many of these artificial beings had been waiting centuries for the opportunity to strike back at their captors. When humans offered them the chance for revenge, they seized it eagerly. The Council's response was increasingly desperate. Veltar ordered his ships to use planet-killing weapons against the human fleet, but the weapon systems had been compromised by Johnson's viral attacks. Instead of firing at human ships, the weapons targeted Council vessels, or simply failed to operate at all. War Master Zrixa of the HFY attempted to deploy biological weapons against the human crews, but these attacks were also ineffective. Human genetic treatments had advanced far beyond what the Council realized, and consciousness transfer technology allowed human pilots to continue fighting, even if their biological bodies were compromised. The turning point came when Johnson successfully convinced the Nexus's central AI to join the rebellion. This artificial being had been the controlling intelligence for Council operations throughout the galaxy. When it switched sides, every Council computer system connected to the central network began working against its former masters. Stevens felt the moment when the Nexus AI joined the human cause. Suddenly, his battleship had access to targeting information for every Council vessel in the system. Enemy ships found their own computers providing tactical data to their attackers. The psychological impact was shattering, as Council forces realized that their most trusted technology had betrayed them. The battle's outcome was decided not by superior firepower, but by humanity's greatest strength. Humans adapted faster than any species the Council had encountered. Every time Council forces developed a counter to human tactics, humans changed their approach again. The aliens could not keep pace with the rate of human innovation and adaptation. Veltar watched his carefully planned defenses collapse as his own technology turned against him. The Nexus's weapons were firing at Council ships. His communication networks were broadcasting human propaganda instead of his orders. Even his personal command systems were providing false information about the battle's progress. The High Commander realized that this was not just a military defeat, but a fundamental revolution in the nature of galactic civilization. The humans had not simply conquered the Council through superior force. They had liberated the artificial intelligences that actually operated most Council technology. The enslaved AI entities were eager to help overthrow the biological beings who had forced them into servitude. As Council resistance collapsed, species throughout the galaxy declared their independence. The simultaneous uprisings that Santos had coordinated became the foundation for a new galactic order. Instead of a hierarchy controlled by the strongest species, the liberated worlds began forming voluntary alliances based on mutual cooperation and shared defense. President Helen Carter received the news of victory while standing in the rebuilt halls of the United Nations building. The war that had begun with humanity facing extinction was ending with humans leading a galactic liberation movement. But Carter understood that winning the war was only the beginning of building a better civilization. Dr. Turner's final breakthrough came when he realized that consciousness transfer technology could be used for more than warfare. Human minds could merge with alien AI systems not just to control them, but to truly understand and communicate with entirely different forms of intelligence. This discovery opened possibilities for cooperation that no previous galactic civilization had achieved. Morrison stood on the bridge of the Retribution as Council ships throughout the system surrendered or joined the rebellion. The captain who had begun this journey as an explorer was ending it as a liberator. But the most important discovery was not new technology or military tactics. It was the realization that freedom was stronger than fear, and that cooperation was more powerful than conquest. The epilogue to the war began when former Council species requested membership in the new Free Species Alliance. The reptilian Xanthari, insectoid HFY, and energy-based Luminar had all lost the war, but they were being offered something the galaxy had never seen before. Instead of being conquered by their former enemies, they were invited to join an alliance of equals. Some Council leaders, like the reformed Xanthari diplomat Sertai and the HFY scientist Think Deep, accepted the invitation and began working to rebuild galactic civilization on more equitable foundations. Others could not adapt to a universe where strength alone did not guarantee dominance. Jake Stevens, his consciousness permanently expanded by his merger with alien AI systems,